Mortal Kombat's finishers have become the stuff of legend. Here's just a few. There's of course the Fatality,
Quan Chi wins. Fatality.
the Brutality,
Finish him. Noob Saibot wins. Brutality.
the Friendship,
Finisher. Striker wins. Friendship. Friendship again.
the Babality,
Smoke wins. Babality.
Also, let's not forget the Furgality.
Finish him.
But what is the one finisher that went from myth to reality? Thanks to the developers at Midway who were tapped into magazine rumors and arcade talk. Well, that, my friends, is the
Animality.
rumors of a finishing move where fighters could transform into an animal and devour their opponent in creative ways began way back in the Mortal Kombat 2 days. This urban legend of a finisher was even referenced in an official guide for the game. Interestingly enough, Sub-Zero ended up becoming a polar bear. Animalities came to life in Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, and Mortal Kombat Trilogy. There was an intricate way to perform these finishers. First, you had to defeat your opponent. Then you had to input the Mercy button combination to give your opponent a second chance. And finally, defeat them again and input the correct button sequence. Then, something like this would happen.
Mileena wins. Animality.
Or you could just do the code to unlock one button Animalities. With the MK1 Khaos Reigns DLC officially welcoming Animalities back to the franchise after nearly 30 years, I thought this was the perfect time to continue my tier list series by ranking every Animality, and I mean every single one, from their debut in MK3 to their most recent resurgence in MK1.
No!
Man, that sounds weird.
Oh, well?
Usually I'd have some elaborate criteria, but for this one, I'm just gonna go with what I think is cool, creative, and gruesome versus what I think is not cool. Bonus points if the devs turned a cute animal into an annihilating machine. You know the drill. I'll be ranking them from S, which is the best, through D, which is the worst. When all is said and done, I'll declare one of these Animalities the GOAT. The GOAT! I will just note that to avoid getting this video age restricted,
I must consult with the Elder Gods.
the over-the-top violence will be somewhat toned down. If you're still on board, be sure to let me know your thoughts and rankings. Now let's get to it and rank every Animality in Mortal Kombat history. But first,
Finish him. Baraka wins.
The vulture, huh?
Animality.
let's begin with Baraka's Animality, where he transforms into a vulture and just splits the opponent in half at the waist. This one's pretty lame, and if I had to guess, it's because Baraka didn't appear in MK3 or UMK3, so for his return in Trilogy, they were just like, yeah, he could be a vulture. I think any animal with razor-sharp teeth would have made way more sense. But let's be real, most of these make no sense. I'm placing Vulture Baraka in the D tier.
Finish him. Cyrax wins.
That's a 20-footer.
25. 3 tons on them.
Animality.
Now this is what I'm talking about. Cyber Ninja Cyrax turns into a great white shark, and just like Bruce back in 75, he devours the opponent. This animality has been my favorite since MK3, and maybe I'm biased because I love the movie Jaws and sharks in general, but after all, this is my tier list, so this one is an easy S tier for me.
Finish him. Ermac wins. Animality.
Ermac as a frog is an interesting one. Not sure how they landed on that, but hey, I'm here for it. It also might be the most powerful frog in history, seeing as he devours the opponent in one bite. But overall, it's middle of the road, not bad, but not the best, so I'll put it in the B tier.
Finish him. Jade wins. Animality.
Now moving to the Edenian assassin Jade, she turns into a cat, performs Kabal's dash attack while clawing them repeatedly until they explode. Based on how cats attack those scratching poles, this one seems pretty faithful. As I mentioned in the intro, any animality that gets creative with household animals or something that's not a killing machine gets an instant boost in my book. This one goes into the A tier.
Animality.
Up next is Jax's lion animality, and I think this one's pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's entirely unique, especially compared to a few other apex predators on this list, but that doesn't mean it's bad. As you'll hear me say a few times for other animalities in this video, Jax's lion finisher pairs a convincing sprite with a faithful portrayal of a lion attack. All in all, I think A tier is a fair call.
Jawnny Cage wins. Animality.
For everyone's favorite ninja mime, Jawnny Cage, who had previously died before being brought back for MK Trilogy, he turns into a kangaroo and simply kicks the opponent off screen. There's minimal blood, so as an MK creator, that's a big W. But otherwise, this one's pretty lame. I like the idea behind it, but in addition to being prolific kickers, kangaroos are notoriously good boxers. I think it could have been better if Jawnny Cage Garou squared up and went to town before kicking the opponent off screen. With all that said, this one goes into the D tier.
Finish him.
Hold up.
Now for Kabal, who I'm sure many of you know can run extremely fast. So what kind of animality did he get? Perhaps a cheetah? Maybe a really fast bird? No? Oh, he's a skeletal rhinoceros.
Kabal wins. Animality.
This is a weird choice, and it's pretty underwhelming. The rhino walks up to the opponent, headbutts them once, and that's it. I think Kabal would have been better served with a quick animal given his speed, as I mentioned before. The sprite for this one looks solid, but it's lackluster otherwise. So I'm putting this one in the C tier.
Finish him. Kano wins.
I missed the part where that's my problem.
Animality.
The trash-talking Aussie Kano turns into a spider, which makes sense because he always spins up a web of lies. Am I right?
Lie, cheat, steal, kill, win.
Kano. He's got no reason to lie.
Except, you know, he's Kano. So you've got a beef with Kano too.
His greed and lies nearly broke the Matoka.
Lie, lie, lie.
Except, you know, he's Kano. Kano.
Anyway, he attaches himself to the opponent and squeezes them to death. Now, spiders creep the hell out of me, but not because of their squeezing strength. This could have been better if Kano spun the character into a web and had baby spiders consume the body. I don't know, maybe the limitations forced Midway to keep it simple, but as it is, I'm putting this one in the C tier.
Finish him.
Bugs Bunny.
Animality.
The trend of female ninjas becoming lovable creatures continues with Kitana as a rabbit. She turns into this adorably deadly critter only to pounce on the opponent's, yeah.
Which timeline is this?
And presumably eat them off screen. I say presumably because you can still hear the blood sound effect after the pair vanish. I like this one a lot, so Rabbit Kitana can hop her way into the A tier.
Wins. Animality.
The Shaolin monk Kung Lao becomes a cheetah, which is fine, but it's nothing too crazy. The death animation is pretty intense, but it reminds me too much of Jax's lion animality from earlier. And I'll just reiterate what I said for that one. It looks exactly like what I'd expect a cheetah to look like when attacking someone. And that's about all I have to say on this. A tier.
Finish him. Liu Kang wins.
Feel your animality, your animality, your animality, your animality.
Alas, we've made it to Liu Kang, and you know the drill. He turns into the iconic dragon from his Mortal Kombat 2 fatality, and this is something that would remain throughout the majority of the series. This is an instant S tier, and I won't hear any arguments otherwise. It's damn near perfect.
Finish him. Mileena wins. Animality.
Rounding out the trio of female ninjas, since Chameleon doesn't get one, Mileena is a skunk, which is just so crazy and out of left field. Like Baraka, I think Mileena would have benefited from an animal with more prominent teeth, but I can't hate on this one. The idea of a skunk spray sending a Mortal Kombat character to their grave is hilarious. I could see some calling this lame, but I think it's pretty fun. So Mileena sprays her way into the A tier.
Finish him. Nightwolf wins.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Animality.
And finally, we have one that makes perfect sense. Nightwolf being a wolf. If Midway didn't do this, I'd have some serious questions. The sprite looks cool, and although it falls somewhat flat at the end, Nightwolf's animality looks pretty accurate, and since he's a wolf, that's an easy A tier ranking for me.
Finish him. Noob Saibot wins. Animality.
From Nightwolf, we move to Noob Saibot, and the easiest what the f animality on this list so far. He's an anteater, and he sucks the opponent into his snout, and just when you think something crazy is going to happen, it ends. Normally, I wouldn't do this, but I'm adding an F tier and putting this one in F tier.
You suck.
It's so random, and not Mileena skunk random. It's more so Noob Saibot Anteater random, since I have nothing else to compare this to. And I know most of these don't make sense as it is, but this one doesn't make sense and it's terrible. My boy Noob deserved way better.
Finish him. Wins. Animality.
Now that we've covered potentially the worst animality in the entire series,
You're a fucking disappointment.
let's get to another top contender. Rayden as an electric eel is, like Nightwolf, another perfect selection. An electricity-based animal for the God of Thunder is not only on brand, but the animality itself is excellent. The eel slithers up to the opponent, constricts them, and electrocutes them until they explode. It's just so good. Rayden's electric eel lands in the S tier.
Finish him. Animality.
Rain as an elephant. What's there to even say about this one? It's another one that doesn't make any sense, especially for a water-based character. However, as far as an elephant-based finisher is concerned, it's not terrible. But why make it a tiny elephant? Why not at least make it a giant elephant that can stomp on the opponent?
Oh, well.
Animality.
I don't know. An elephant for Rain is incredibly bizarre, but it's not the worst, so I'll just put it in the C tier.
Finisher. Reptile wins. Animality.
The next two animalities are incredibly polarizing, to say the least, and we begin with Reptile becoming a chimpanzee. Now, I know you must be thinking, well, he hated that Rain turned into an elephant since it makes no sense, so Reptile as a chimp should be somewhere in the C tier. But in all honesty, this one is hilarious. I don't think all animalities have to be gruesome if it's at least funny and entirely out of left field. This one definitely falls under that category. Chimp Reptile chasing an opponent off screen is a fun misdirect, but not quite S tier, so I'll just put it in the A tier.
Finish him. Animality.
From one complete curveball to another, we have Scorpion becoming, no, not a scorpion, but a penguin? With an exploding egg? Yeah, this is peak classic Animality. The story behind this one is mysterious, but the consensus is that a character we will cover shortly got the nod for a scorpion. So that spot was occupied, and when Scorpion was re-added in UMK3, the devs needed something else, and they landed on a penguin. I'm not sure how they got there, but it's so dumb that I like it. S tier.
Finish him. Sector wins.
The Batman.
Animality.
Sector turning into a head-removing bat is something I grappled with while trying to determine his position on this list. I couldn't think of a better option or something that would better represent the character, maybe a fire ant or something, but that may not read well with the limited graphics. All things considered, Sector as a bat isn't too bad, so I'll put this one in the B tier.
Finish him. Shang Tsung wins. Animality.
What is one animal you could closely associate with the conniving sorcerer Shang Tsung? A snake. He's a snake, and he's always been a snake. And in that regard, Shang's Animality, where he transforms into a cobra and consumes his opponent whole, might be the most fitting of anyone I've listed thus far. It's so good, in fact, that I'm putting it in the S tier.
Finish him. She wins.
What the fuck happened?
Animality.
But in all seriousness, Shiva ended up with the Scorpion Animality in MK3. And it's really not that bad, but I think Midway should have just passed because there was no chance Scorpion was going to stay absent from the series. They could have picked anything else for Shiva and kept this one aside for Scorpion. Although we did end up with an S tier penguin for Scorpion, it's just a missed opportunity, and one they'd have to rectify in Mortal Kombat 4. The Scorpion Animality itself is decent, but it's almost offensive to use it for Shiva, especially when there's a character named Scorpion in the series. For those reasons, I'm putting it in the D tier.
Finish him. Sindel wins.
Huh?
Animality.
To summarize Sindel transforming into a giant hornet with one word, I would say forgettable. I just genuinely don't enjoy Sindels, and it does nothing for me. And to be honest, I couldn't for the life of me remember what animal Sindel turned into before starting on this video. And once I saw it, I remembered why. D tier.
Smoke wins. Animality.
Now to the pair of smokes in this game. We begin with Cyber Smoke, who transforms into a bull and viciously rams the opponent off screen. I've always loved this animality. The bull's red and black appearance looks great, and it reminds me of The Rock's old Brahma bull apparel for all my 90s wrestling fans out there. Despite my admiration, I don't think this is an S tier animality, so I'll give Bull Smoke an A tier ranking.
Finish him. Smoke wins. Animality.
From Cyber to Human Smoke, there is quite a difference. Human Smoke trades the bull for a porcupine, who, as Churro_EYT points out, functions as a needler from the Halo franchise many years before the game even came out. Now, whether this animality inspired that weapon is unknown, but as far as the impact of this one is concerned, I think it's pretty well done. Sure, it once again doesn't make any sense, but using a porcupine's quills on an opponent to the point of explosion is up there. And this is a precursor to one we'll see later. A tier.
Finish him. Sonya wins. Animality.
Sonya's animality turns her into a hawk, where she slowly lifts the opponent up and off screen until they inexplicably explode and body parts come raining down. It's another somewhat forgettable one, but I'd like to imagine that Sonya Hawk shreds the opponent to pieces. Meh, D tier.
Striker wins. Animality.
Striker becoming a Tyrannosaurus Rex is another one of my favorites. The sprite looks excellent, and though they could have given this to a different character, it's incredible nonetheless. Although that dinosaur noise is just not good. It gives off strong Jurassic Park vibes in my opinion, and that alone warrants an S tier.
Finish him. Sub-Zero wins.
There's Sub-Zero.
Animality.
We round out the classic animalities with one of the best without question. Sub-Zero transforming into a polar bear. I've used the word perfect a few times in this video, and this is another one of those cases. It's an outstanding reflection of the character. The sprite looks really good, and it's again an accurate portrayal of what I think a polar bear attack would actually look like. This animality was so popular, in fact, that Bear Sub-Zero would become a popular character in various Mugen games.
Round 1, fight!
It was perfect.
This one goes into the S tier with zero hesitation. Alright, now here's a quick tier list update before we get to the MK1 versions. Thus far, the S tier includes Cyrax, Liu Kang, Rayden, Scorpion, Shang Tsung, Striker, and Sub-Zero. The A tier contains Jade, Jax, Kitana, Kung Lao, Mileena, Nightwolf, Reptile, Cyber Smoke, and Human Smoke. Only Ermac and Sector settled into the B tier. Kabal, Kano, and Rain landed in the C tier. Baraka, Jawnny Cage, Shiva, Sindel, and Sonya ended up in the D tier. And finally, we created an F tier just for Anteater Noob Saibot. Let me preface the MK1 Animality rankings by saying these are infinitely better than the ones I just discussed. We are talking nearly 30 years of advancement in game development, So I just want to clarify that the MK1 Animalities ranked in any of these tiers do not necessarily mean they are comparable to their 2D counterparts. By that, I mean an S tier in MK3, UMK3, and Trilogy is just not on the same level as an S tier in this game. I hope that makes sense, but with all that said, let's get to it. Our first MK1 Animality is Ashura, the demon from the Netherrealm who transforms into a unicorn of all things. Unicorn Ashura then teleports through the opponent, impales them through the back of their head with her horn, and finally roasts the opponent alive with magical unicorn fire. I like this one quite a bit on a few different levels. For one, it creates a fun contrast from Ashura's demonic background while also paying tribute to her being a good demon. It could have been more gruesome, but the visual aspect of the unicorn is great. Let's set the stage with an A tier for Ashura's winged unicorn.
Baraka wins.
Moving to Baraka, who, as we covered earlier, disappointingly morphed into a vulture. I'd have to say this one redeems the Tarkatan in a truly horrifying manner. Baraka takes a page out of Human Smoke's playbook, transforming into a porcupine, and good grief is this one brutal. So, he transforms into a porcupine, hits the opponent into the air, shoots its quills into the opponent before they crash down onto Baracupine's back, and oh man is this one nasty. You can almost feel the pain endured by the recipient. It perfectly fits Baraka's chaotic and barbaric presence and might win the award for the most gruesome. This one is S tier.
Animality. Cyrax wins.
Next up is Cyrax, who landed in the S tier with an epic Great White Shark Animality. MK1 changed this concept into a hornet, which I'll admit makes more sense from a color perspective since Cyrax sports yellow armor. So for her actual Animality, she flies up to the opponent, stings them until their head explodes before splitting them in half. Unfortunately, where Baraka had a glow up, Cyrax's Animality in MK1 is a bit of a letdown. It's not terrible because I don't think any of these are really that bad, but I'd say a bit underwhelming, especially considering the character's previous Animality. It's definitely below average in my opinion, so I'm putting this one in the C tier.
Animality. Ermac wins.
Now to Ermac, who trades out his B tier frog Animality from UMK3 for a locust swarm in MK1. I must say, NetherRealm nailed this concept. It leans heavily into Ermac's infamous line, "We are many." You know, the line he seemingly says every chance he gets.
We are many. We are many. We are many more.
We are many more, but infinity times infinity no paybacks.
We are many. You are one. You are one. We are many.
Wait, doesn't that go the other way around?
So yeah, he becomes a swarm of locusts and consumes the opponent's flesh and organs until nothing more is left but a skeleton. Although I didn't hate the frog, this is a considerable upgrade, and I find the theming on it pretty clever. It doesn't require much additional analysis because it is what it is, but I will say it's easily one of the more painful Animalities to imagine in the game. A tier.
Animality. Shao wins.
After not getting an Animality in the Midway era, General Shao's time to shine is here and now in Mortal Kombat 1. I wasn't sure what animal the devs would choose, and was somewhat surprised to see him transform into a grizzly bear. I don't hate it though, it's actually not that bad. So Grizzly Shao runs up, slashes the opponent, pulls them back by their leg, and then devours their head. It's simple and effective, but nothing crazy. I probably would have landed this one in the C tier, but I'm adding some bonus points for the Jungle Book reference since it's called Bare Necessities. This one slots into the B tier.
Animality. Geras wins.
Let's move to Geras, who is a hippopotamus, which are amongst the most dangerous animals on the planet, claiming roughly 500 lives in Africa per year. Anyway, this one is pretty basic, but it's how I'd imagine a hippo would annihilate its prey. Gyropotamus transforms, gets the opponent in his mouth, and chomps down on them, resulting in the blood and body parts spilling onto the ground. There's a few things I like about this one, and specifically, the fact that the hippo retains Geras' eyes, which is a nice touch. I also enjoy the animation of Geras just flopping to the ground because it plays into the lighthearted, ridiculous nature of these finishers. All in all, it's solid, but not quite the cream of the crop, so I'm putting this one in the B tier.
Animality. Havoc wins.
The Master of Chaos, Havoc, becomes an equally chaotic hyena. Shout out Lion King. However, as this Animality's name says, this is no laughing matter. Havoc's is on the same level of violence as Baraka's. Hyena Havoc pounces on the opponent and viciously removes their entrails, which is just nasty. It's over the top and fits the character quite well. This hyena exemplifies all of Havoc's chaotic qualities, so that's an easy A tier.
Cage to wardrobe. Heavy fight, take one. Action!
Animality. Jawnny Cage wins.
I could probably end the video here and be perfectly satisfied. And if you recall my Cyrax ranking from the Midway games, you know where this is going. Jawnny Cage trades a lame kangaroo animality for the apex predator of the ocean, a great white shark. Not only is this animality equal parts hilarious and violent, but it also pays homage to one of my top 3 favorite movies of all time, Deep Blue Sea. No, I'm just kidding. That's of course Jaws. For this one, Cage is on set where he puts on a shark outfit that rivals the beast that haunted Amity back in '75. In a brilliant tribute to Chrissy Watkins' Last Swim, Jawnny Cage, get it? Devours the opponent from beneath the surface before going back for seconds. I think my analysis serves as enough praise. This one gets an S tier ranking. Jawnny's is a tough act to follow, but Kenshi is up to the task. Where Nightwolf fittingly assumed the wolf role in the Midway era, Kenshi takes the reins in MK1. The best part? There are 2 wolves, one for Kenshi and one representing the Sento spirit. The 2 wolves attack the opponent simultaneously and aggressively tear them in half. This one is brutal, and I feel it captures a wolf attack quite well, especially with how the Sento wolf flanks the opponent. Kenshi Wolf ticks all the boxes I look for in an animality, so I'm putting it in the S tier.
Kitana wins.
Kitana trades out a rabbit in the Midway era for a hummingbird in MK1. Yes, you heard that correct. Kitana as a hummingbird. This is a unique addition to the list of animals we've seen so far, since I doubt anyone predicted this for Kitana. All that said, this one would probably be one of the more painful animalities to endure. The hummingbird approaches the opponent and repeatedly pecks at them from all angles. Then, Kitana backs off, and what remains is a body that resembles a flower, before the hummingbird begins feeding on their blood. I was actually surprised at how much I enjoyed this one. It's drawn out, which makes it way more impactful, and the ending is gruesome but also oddly pleasing to look at, which suits Kitana pretty well. Overall, Kitana's animality is quite effective. I'm trying not to overcrowd the S tier too much, but these are seriously great. I will reluctantly put Katanas in the A tier. After being an A-tier cheetah in the Midway era, Kung Lao receives a welcomed upgrade in MK1, where he transforms into a tiger. Although I don't quite get the connection here, I think the tiger looks great and it's another tough one to watch. Tiger Lao slowly creeps up to the opponent, literally rips their face off, which is followed by some gross noises. And finally, he rips out the opponent's spine. This one gets an S tier ranking just for going the extra mile. It's unsettling as all hell to watch, and though I don't quite understand why Kung Lao is a tiger, I guess it somewhat plays into his previous animality. Li Mei gets her first animality in MK1, and it's a banger debut. She transforms into perhaps the most cuddleable panda I've ever seen in gaming history. And honestly, this wouldn't be the worst way to go out.
You can have it.
So Li Mei sits down into the transformation, which is hilarious, and just rolls over to the opponent before biting their arm to rip it off. Then, she crushes their head by sitting on it and continues to snack on the arm. There's nothing I'd change about this one. NRS nailed the panda's mannerisms and movements, and this one is just too precious to rank any lower than S tier.
Animality. Liu Kang wins.
Up until Mortal Kombat 1, Liu Kang's animality has always been the signature dragon. However, this game swaps out the dragon for a phoenix, which is a fair trade if you ask me. A fire-based bird makes perfect sense for Liu Kang, and it delivers. After morphing into the phoenix, Liu Kang flies over to the opponent, connecting his wings to make a barrier around them, and then cooks them alive. Once their flesh reaches well done, a pile of ash remains in the aftermath. Plus, the phoenix literally rises from the ashes. I know some people were disappointed about the switch, but I think this is a strong animality overall. It takes Fire God to a whole new level, so it makes sense thematically. And although I do love it, I don't think it's S tier, but it is a strong A tier.
Mileena wins.
Last time out for Mileena, her skunk animality landed her in the A tier. In MK1, the developers went with an orchid mantis, which I feel fits the character much better. It's pretty straightforward. She morphs, stabs the opponent's arms, and then consumes their head before splitting them in half. It's gross and effective simultaneously, and I feel it nails the way a mantis consumes its prey. Splitting the opponent in half at the very end is the cherry on top. I can't think of much I'd change with this one, but it's not among my favorites despite how good it is. In reality, there's some stiff competition in this game, so Mileena Mantis slides into the A tier. The vampirist Natara makes her Animality debut with a giant bat. A perfect decision considering she is a vampirist. What else could you turn Natara into if not a bat? So for this one, she turns into the bat and flies off at the opponent. In the next scene, she is depicted eating the opponent's head while hanging upside down. By default, I think this is one of the more underwhelming Animalities in the game. It's not bad, but I think it's forgettable, which is honestly probably worse than being bad. The bat itself looks decent, and I like the visual of it hanging upside down, but it's a step below the others for me at least, so I'm putting it in the C tier.
Animality. Noob Saibot wins.
Next up, we have yet another heavy hitter, Noob Saibot as an alligator. No wait, 2 alligators. Noob's Anteater Animality left a horrendous impression, and thankfully, NRS did right by the Wraith this time around. It's been over 13 years since we last saw Noob's legendary Make-A-Wish fatality. Yeah, you know the one. Once the Animality teaser dropped in the initial trailer for Noob, it seemed obvious that this was the direction NRS was going, and it did not disappoint. Sure enough, after inputting the button sequence, an alligator emerges alongside a shadow alligator, and the two proceed to reenact one of the best fatalities in Mortal Kombat history. Noob's Animality works on so many different levels, and I would say the design is as close to perfect as humanly possible. The shadow alligator exiting with his half of the opponent through a portal is also a brilliant touch. There's no debate here. S tier.
Animality. Quan Chi wins.
Quan Chi's inaugural Animality takes a page out of Stryker's playbook from the Midway era, turning him into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. However, Quan Chi's version is a skeletal T-Rex, which plays into his abilities as a sorcerer. After morphing, he consumes the opponent's upper body, which kind of just plops into the dinosaur's stomach. This one has some comedic elements, which I like, and it once again reminds me of a kill out of Jurassic Park. I also enjoy how seamless the transformation is for this one. The dinosaur also has Quan Chi's mark on its head. Although it's nothing too crazy, it works for me, and based on what I've mentioned, this one belongs in the A tier.
No!
Animality. Rayden wins.
Now to Rayden, who I teased in the intro, and I can happily say this is another top tier Animality. I think NRS took the approach of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, by bringing the electric eel back into the mix. The MK1 version is a fun upgrade while keeping the same idea of his MK Trilogy Animality intact. I particularly love the eel's slithery animation and the explosion effect after shocking the opponent. Rayden's Animality is great for all the reasons I mentioned in the MK Trilogy ranking, and I just love that it pays homage to the classic. Since I put that one in the S tier, I'll do the same here. Thankfully, Rain received a proper upgrade from the bizarre elephant abomination in the 2D era. Even better, the devs actually gave him a water-based animal, and I'll just say, this one is incredibly well executed. Rain turns into a puffer fish, floats into the opponent's mouth, swims down to their abdomen/chest area, and explodes them from the inside. I think there's a clear reason why NRS led their Animality announcement at San Diego Comic-Con with this, because it's peak Mortal Kombat insanity. I was speechless when I first saw it, and I'm still finding it difficult to comprehend. The devs could have honestly gone with any fish or water-based creature, but this one fits Rain perfectly, features an obscure animal you wouldn't expect, and above all else, it's gory. S tier. Coming down from the high of Rain's Animality, next up is Reiko, who was another character making his Animality debut. I'll be honest, this one is just meh in my opinion. He turns into a ram, hits the opponent once, and then runs through the opponent, splitting them in half. I struggle to see where this could have been improved and whether a ram was even the right call for Reiko. If anything, this probably should have gone to General Shao, considering his helmet has literal horns on it. Ultimately, I couldn't come up with a better animal for Reiko, but if you have any thoughts, let me know in the comments. All in all, this is one I'll probably forget after a while, so that screams C tier.
Reptile wins.
The Zaterran has one of the more polarizing animalities in the entire game, but I'd say that the consensus is mostly positive. Instead of a chimpanzee like in the 2D era, MK1 Reptile morphs into a Venus flytrap, otherwise known as Audrey 2 from the Little Shop of Horrors. And I mean that, because the name of the finisher is a direct reference to that movie. So where do I stand on this one? Well, I know some argued that a Venus flytrap isn't an animal, which is fair, but you can't say that it isn't innovative. I'm glad the devs went with something insane instead of an actual reptile, because that would be just way too predictable. I think we get enough of his true reptilian form in his moveset. Oh yeah, for the actual animality, the Venus flytrap pulls Syzoth into its mouth and bites repeatedly until body parts start falling off. This is a clever twist on the animality concept, and I commend NRS for the swerve, because it gives off similar vibes to his original animality, at least in the sense that it's not something you'd expect. The creativity on this one alone warrants an A tier ranking.
Scorpion wins.
Ah yes, Scorpion as a Scorpion. The world feels whole once again. It sure makes way more sense than Shiva as a Scorpion, and I don't think there was any other choice, except of course, the Penguin. Honestly, I would have been fine with that too, because seeing that in this game would have been pure comedy. I will say though, although it's fitting, this one didn't wow me. I expected better for the proverbial face of the franchise, but it's obviously not bad. The scar on the Scorpion itself is a fun touch, and it's definitely gruesome, but I enjoyed many others much more. This is the perfect B tier animality.
Animality. Sector wins.
Sector trades out the bat from the character's previous animality for a rhino in Mortal Kombat 1. Like Cyrax, I wasn't overly impressed with Sector's animality in this game. Again, I don't think it's bad since most of these are at least decent, but it's forgettable. The animality itself features a stampeding rhino, which is a solid choice design-wise, but it falls on the lower end compared to the others. This could have been the perfect opportunity to transform Sector into a colony of fire ants, like I mentioned earlier. All in all, the Stampede aspect is accurate, but it's one of the weaker animalities in this game, so I'm putting this one in the C tier.
Shang Tsung wins.
Knock it off.
Shang Tsung returns with a revamp of his animality from the 2D era, which as you might remember, landed in the S tier. His MK1 version offers a welcomed upgrade from a graphical perspective. I mean, this snake looks incredible. I'm also about 72% sure this is a reference to the movie Anaconda. Anyway, Shang Tsung's concept remains the same, but instead of swallowing the opponent whole, he constricts poor Reptile here, bites his head, and twists him to death. For the positives, like with most of the MK1 animalities, the animation looks outstanding. Everything from the transformation to the detail on the Cobra itself is impressive. Now theoretically, I should put this one in the S tier because that's where Shang's previous animality ended up, and that's precisely what I'm gonna do. I just think that Shang is the perfect snake, and I'm glad that this pays tribute to his past while keeping it fresh. Sindel interestingly passed her unimpressive giant hornet to Cyrax and added a tarantula to her morphing abilities. Now I swear to you, when I commented on how Kano's animality could have been improved earlier, this could have been better if Kano spun the character into a web and had baby spiders consume the body. I had not even seen Sindel's yet. I know Sindel's didn't play out exactly how I said, but it's pretty damn close. So for the Queen of Outworld, Spindel traps poor Reptile, bites his head, and then removes his arms, torso, and legs before baby spiders erupt from his body. There's a certain unimaginable level of nightmare fuel involved in this one, at least for me. As someone with a mild case of arachnophobia, I was anxiously waiting for a spider to emerge in MK1. And sure enough, it was Sindel. I actually quite like this for Sindel, especially with the arachnid's purple color scheme. It probably would have been less impactful had the spiders not spilled out at the end. That minor detail made all the difference in my ranking. A tier. NRS announced that Smoke would transform not into a porcupine or a bull, but instead into a gorilla well before Khaos Reigns released. I thought it was underwhelming then, and I feel similarly now. He traded one of the better animalities in the 2D era to something not as memorable. I wouldn't say I hate it, but I think the devs whiffed on this one. As Haha Fun One name questioned, why isn't Smoke's animality a bear? As in Smokey the Bear? Even if it's not a direct reference, the connection is there, and General Shao could have been anything else. Anyway, Smokey the gorilla charges at the opponent and rips them in half by their mouth. I think this one could have been way better even with Smoke as the gorilla. I get that a gorilla would charge and probably destroy an adversary like this, and it may in all honesty be a nod to King Kong's method of killing dinosaurs, but I think it just needed something else. Even if he just ragdolls the opponent back and forth for a bit. I don't dislike it as much as the ones in the C tier and lower, so I think B tier is a good spot for Smoke. NetherRealm had the seemingly impossible task of following one of, if not the, best and most memorable animalities of the Midway era.
Their Sub-Zero.
They ultimately settled on a woolly mammoth, and all things considered, this is a solid follow-up, but definitely not on the same level. So Sub-Zero transforms into the extinct woolly mammoth, frozen tusks and all, and impales the opponent through one of said tusks before ripping them in half. The pure spectacle and scale of this animality is striking. I really enjoy when the devs use giant animals, especially since it wasn't much of an option the last time these finishers were in the game. The woolly mammoth itself plays into Sub-Zero's ice-cold nature, since these magnificent creatures were able to thrive in cold climates. It's certainly no
Their Sub-Zero.
And I would have been fine if NRS just repeated the same formula, but the woolly mammoth is a solid alternative. Let's go with A tier for this one.
Takeda wins.
The Shirai Ryu's pride and joy, Takeda Takahashi, is up next. And he's a giant octopus? Yes, that's correct. Takeda is an octopus. And I know some of you might be thinking, this doesn't make any sense for him. But that's where you're mistaken. Before we get there, let's take another look at this animality. Takeda impales, let's face it, he impales Reptile, pulls him underwater, tears him in half, and finally enjoys a nice Zaterran snack. This one is hilarious, particularly the way Takeda does that acrobatic flip into a random hole in the ground that leads to an ocean, I guess? I don't know, but it's pretty funny. Now, any confusion regarding why Takeda becomes an octopus should evaporate once I call up the Cove stage fatality from MKX.
Takeda wins. Fatality. Get over here!
This is a direct reference to that finisher, which is fitting for Takeda since he debuted in that game. It's a great homage and perhaps the most insane connection we've seen thus far. Although it's not the most brutal, the reference alone in Takeda's warrants an S tier ranking.
Tanya wins.
Rounding out the Mortal Kombat 1 roster is Tanya, the Umgadi warrior. This is Tanya's Animality debut, and yeah, this one is a bizarre choice. She's a giraffe. Since giraffes are herbivores, NRS had to get a bit creative with this one. So Tanya-raff, I guess? Grabs Reptile and slams him repeatedly while various body parts fly off. Of all the ones discussed, this one falls on the lower end. There's just nothing that separates it from the ones I ranked in S tier, A tier, or even some in the B tier. I thought about making Tanya's the only D tier from this game, but then I saw the name of this animality, Kills R Us. For all you 90s kids, you should get the reference. For those who aren't, Jeffrey the Giraffe was the mascot for the Toys R Us toy store brand, which played a prominent role in many of our childhoods. Just for that, an otherwise mid animality lands itself in the C tier. And that's that. Every Mortal Kombat animality ranked.
Jesus! What the hell?
I almost forgot the 3 guest characters, who some didn't even think would get an animality. Those of course are Homelander from The Boys, Omni-Man from Invincible, and Peacemaker from Peacemaker.
Homelander wins.
Let's kick it off with Homelander, and I'll say that I had no clue what any of these characters would be or if they'd even get Animalities. The obvious choice would have been a cow for Homelander, given his desire for calcium, but NetherRealm settled on a patriotic griffin. This choice is damn near perfect, as it oozes America. In fact, it might be the most American finisher in Mortal Kombat history, but I may have to check that. So for Birdlander here, he takes flight, throws the opponent into the air, slices them in half with his claws, catches the top half, and finishes him with laser vision. Damn, this is a well done Animality. I just love the look of the bird. It's so majestic, and I feel the laser vision really puts it over the top for me. It really encapsulates Homelander as a character, and I'm not sure any other animal or creature for that matter would have turned out as good. That said, I'm putting this one in the S tier. It's a home run. While there was definitely some uncertainty surrounding Homelander's potential animality, there was even more with Omni-Man. Considering the show and comic series he stems from, there are many species he could have potentially turned into. The prevailing theory was a Ragnar, but nope, Omni-Man turns into a damn kaiju. For those who aren't familiar with Invincible, this gargantuan beast is called Hail Mary. You could see Omni-Man fight it in Season 1, Episode 3 and 7. And NRS took this monster and put it in MK1. The Hail Mary creature smushes the opponent into the ground, picks them back up, and then bites them in half. It's such a great full circle moment from a reference perspective, and one we can comfortably add to his 2 fatalities. I think NRS took good care of Omni-Man in this game, and I'd consider moving him up a tier in my guest character tier list just based on this animality. It gets a kaiju level S tier.
Peacemaker wins.
Rounding out the third of the current 3 DLC characters, and mind you, this is pre-Ghostface, Conan, and T-1000.
And his name is John C.
Also known as Peacemaker. Of the 3, this seemed to be the most obvious and easy to predict. And most of us were right, but that doesn't mean it's bad by any means. On the contrary, I was pleasantly surprised at NetherRealm's approach to this one. They could have just turned him into Eagly and called it a day, but no. Instead, John Cena morphs into a bald eagle himself and joins Eagly in decimating the opponent. It begins with the removal of the opponent's legs, followed by a dual-wielded assault rifle attack, before Eagly drops a grenade, literally ending this animality with a bang. And just for good measure, the pair of eagles fly out with an American flag, rivaling Homelander's as a strong contender for the most patriotic finisher. It may be redundant at this point, but this is S tier. I love how it plays into the goofiness of Peacemaker's character, and of course how it incorporates Eagly. NRS clearly put a lot of care and effort into the guests, which is unfortunate for the others who weren't as impressive. But again, this is all subjective. And there you have it, an astronomical 59 animalities ranked. Let's take one last look at the final product and see if any shuffling is in order. I know some of you don't like when the S tier is overloaded, but I do think many of these are worthy of this ranking. That said, the only 2 I would move would be Mileena's skunk animality probably down to B tier, and I'd move Shiva's up to C tier. I'm pretty satisfied with the MK1 rankings because most fit their respective characters, and those that don't mostly make up for it, either from a humor perspective or they're just incredibly gory. Or it's a panda. Here's one final look at the tier list before I proclaim the GOAT! Now for the GOAT ranking. This was an insanely difficult decision. Many of them are memorable for one reason or another, whether they are gruesome, funny, or a bit of both. I've decided to proclaim 2 GOATs, one for the 2D era and one for MK1, since the 2 games are just so different. I ultimately narrowed it down to Cyrax and Bear Sub-Zero in the 2D era, and Jawnny Cage, Rain, and Omni-Man in MK1. After much deliberation, I'm putting Bear Sub-Zero in the GOAT tier.
Bear Sub-Zero
wins.
This is one of the few that actually makes sense in the Midway era. The sprite looks great, and it's impossible to ignore what this animality would become years later. Cyrax's is probably still my favorite, but I objectively think Sub-Zero's is the best. Now for Mortal Kombat 1, I'm going with Jawnny Cage. As a fan of everything shark related, Johnny's MK1 Animality took Cyrax's from MK3, threw in a pair of Jaws references, and included a touch of Johnny's humor and background. It truly has it all in my opinion, and while it's not the most gory, it doesn't need to be.
You son of a...
Well, that's it. I have to say that I had a blast revisiting the classic Animalities, and I'm happy NRS brought them back after nearly 3 decades. We've seen modern day versions of babalities, friendships, and brutalities. It was about time for Animalities to finally make their triumphant return. And it did not disappoint. I'm curious to see what future DLC characters, especially the upcoming guests, will transform into. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Anyway, that's all for me today, but please don't leave without leaving your thoughts and opinions. If you've made it this far, comment Jawnny Cage. Also, let me know what you agree with and what you disagree with in the comments, as I love hearing your perspectives. As always, until next time, thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed your stay here, and I'll be back with another video soon.